Jai Hind दोस्तों, welcome to AP Academy. Today we are going to discuss about cell, chapter number 8 of the NCERT science book. We will study in this chapter about cell, what is a cell, what is its structure, and functions which are performed by these cell. Now, first of all, what is a cell? See, cell is actually the basic structural unit of the organisms. The basic structural unit means all the living organisms which are present in the world are made up of cells. Are made up of cells. Now, if you see in an example, if you see any building, now how this building is made up of, if you see, there are a lot of bricks which are used, which are assembled together to form the building. Similarly, in a living organisms, there are lot of cells which are combined together to form an organism. Now, in a living organism, if you see, there is there is lot of organs which are present in living organism. For example, if you see in our human beings, there are more than two or three organs are there in our body. If you see, there is a heart is an organ, kidney is there, lungs is there, other organs are also present, and each organ is having certain specific functions. You all know in the last classes we have studied about respiratory system and which organ is responsible for the respiration process, that is lungs. We have seen transportation system means the circulation of blood. Now which organ is performing the circulation of the blood, that is our heart. We have also seen about digestive system, which organ is responsible for that, stomach, intestine, as well as kidneys there. So each and every function organ is having certain specific functions. Now each of these organs are made up of these cells. Each organ is made up of these cells. So living organisms are made up of cells. Now there are certain organisms in which there is a single cell present in that organism. There are organisms in which there is a single cell in the whole organism, that is called as unicellular organisms. You have studied about this unicellular organisms. So it is that kind of organisms in which there is a single celled structure, means there is only single cell is present, and all the functions are performed by this single cell only. Example, if you see that the unicellular organisms, you have already heard about amoeba. It is a single celled organism. We will see in detail about amoeba. So organisms which are having single cell are called unicellular, and those organisms which are having more than one cell, means either two, three, or thousands, millions, but it is more than one, they are called as multicellular organisms. So there are two types of organisms are there. One is the unicellular and another one is the multicellular organisms. For example, human beings. Human beings are the multicellular organisms, means in our body there are, I mean, thousands of cells are present in our body. So we are multicellular. So you all understand what is the cell? Cell is actually the basic structural unit of an organisms, and the functions which an organisms are performing, that is these cells performing that functions. So cell is just an example of a building which is made up of bricks. Similarly, the living organisms are made up of cells. Clear? Now, as we all see that as the bricks is of different shape, design and size, organisms, cells are also of different shape and size. Means as bricks are different, so cells are also made up of different. Means one cell is different from the other cell. Clear? One cell is different from the other cell. Now, if you see where from this cell come from, means who has discovered this term cell. So there is one person whose name is Robert Hooke. There is one person whose name is Robert Hooke. In 1665, in 1665, Robert Hooke observed, means that this person observed slice of slice of cork, slice of cork under a simple magnifying glass, under a simple magnifying glass. Now Robert Hooke observes this slice of cork under a magnifying glass. See, he is observing, yes, if you see in a this is a slice of cork, and this guy has seen it from a simple magnifying device, and he has seen and he has observed that this cork contains lot of boxes. If you see here minutely, there is a lot of boxes which are combined together, just like a honeycomb. Honeycomb means madhumakki ka chatta. Have you seen honeycomb in the plants? Lot of madhumakkis but are there and they are roaming together. So like a honeycomb, these boxes are appeared, and he has seen closely that these boxes are separated by another box by a wall. A wall is separating these two boxes. Hence, on seeing these boxes, he has coined the term cell for each box. So, for the first time, Robert Hooke has coined the term that is cell. He has seen in the cork slice the boxes, and each box he has termed it as a cell. But if you see in our living organisms, the cells are not so. The cells, if we want to see the living organisms, cells, then the discovery of improved microscopes should be there. Nowadays, if you see, microscopes are of very high magnification factor. That's why we can able to observe even the smallest cell of any living organisms. We can test it out, we can see the structure as well as we can see the functions which is performing by this cell. So Robert Hooke was the person who has first coined the term cell. Now, as we all see in our world, I have seen you that this is the brick wall, and this is about cell. So cell is actually what? Cell is the basic structural unit of the organisms. Clear? As well as it is, its size is very small. Now, have you seen the cells? You cannot see with your naked eyes. The cell's size is so small that without the magnifying glass you cannot see the cell. So the size of the cells are very very small. Clear? So we cannot see with our naked eyes. Next, now as we all know, there are lot of living organisms which are there in the world. In our earth, there are lot of organisms, living organisms are there. So can you observe that each living organisms is having different shape and size? So their number also varies in cells. Now, in a as you all know, that multicellular organisms are those organisms which are having more than one cell. Now, more than one cell means the quantity is two. The organism which is having only two cells is also multicellular, and the organism which is having 1 lakh cells is also a multicellular organism. So there is a variation in the shape as well as the size of the organisms. That is why the number of cells, their shape and their size are also varying. Clear? Now, what is about number of cells? As I have already discussed that organisms that are having more than one cell are called multicellular organisms, and the organisms which are having single cell is called unicellular organisms. Now, unicellular organisms example is amoeba. Okay, amoeba is there, and multicellular organisms, as we all know, human beings are there, animals are there. Clear? So in our body there are lot of cells, there are trillions of cells of various shapes and size are present in our body. Clear? So we have seen there is a multicellular organism and unicellular organism. Now, a single-celled organism performs all the necessary functions that a multicellular organisms perform. See, if you see in our human body, lot of functions are there. As we all know, respiratory function, digestive function, circulatory function, transportation function. So all these functions are performed by different set of organs. Now, an organism with a single cell have to perform all these functions with the help of that single cell only. For example, like amoeba captures as well as digests food, respires, excretes, grow and reproduce. Means multicellular organisms, similar functions are performed by group of cells. Means any specific types of cells is performing that function, which is also called as tissues. Which is also called as tissues. But in case of a single celled organism, there is a single cell only, but that cell is performing multiple functions. That cell is performing multiple functions. I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, next, if you see in this there, this is amoeba. This is a single-celled unicellular organism, that is amoeba, and this is also a single-celled microorganism that is called as paramecium. This is also a unicellular organism. So amoeba, as it is a single-celled organism, so all the functions are performed by a single cell. All the functions are performed by a single cell. Clear? Now, if you see, next is the shape of the cell. Now, as you all see, in this amoeba, is any a definite shape? The answer is no. So amoeba is that kind of single-celled organism which is not having any definite shape. Means the amoeba keeps on changing its shape. Now at the time of respiration, its shape is changing. At the time of excretion, its shape is changing. So there is no definite shape present. Clear? Now these these types of organisms in which their length or their size is varying, or they are changing their shape, these organisms are called as pseudopodia. These organisms are called as pseudopodia. So pseudopodia means false feet. It means in urban it means false feet. So these organisms are kept on changing their shapes. So these projections appears and disappears as amoeba moves. Now in our human beings there is also one cell which is changing its shapes, that is WBC, which is called as white blood cell. White blood cell. Now, WBC is that kind of organ or that kind of cell which is present in human blood which can change its shape. But WBC is a cell. Amoeba is a single cell, but it is a complete organism. It is a complete organism. Now, there are certain different shapes are also present in the organisms. If you see clearly, there are three types of shapes are there for an organisms. Now, if you see the first shape, it is actually a spherical shape. It is actually which type of shape? It is a round or spherical shape. Clear? Now, this is a red blood cell. Actually, this is the spherical red blood cell. So, there is some cells which are spherical or rounded shape. That is RBC is a rounded shape cell. Now, there is a shape that is spindle shaped. This is a spindle shaped. Now, spindle shaped cells. Now, as we all see, the muscles which a human being is having, this is the muscle shape. This is a muscle cell. So the muscle cell is having this type of shape, that is spindle shape. Now the third one, if you will see, it is a long branched cell. Now some cells are having this kind of structure in which there is a long structure as well as branches are there. These types of cells are called as nerve cell. These types of cells are called as nerve cell. So if you see, there are lot of shapes are there, different shapes. As we'll see, the spherical or a rounded shape, RBC is there. Now for the spindle shaped, it is muscle cells, as well as for the long branch shapes, it is a nerve cell. Clear? So each cell is having different functions. Clear? So that is why their shape is also different. Now, if you see, now which part of the cell gives its shape? Now, actually a cell is actually made up of different parts, and each part, now which part of the cell is giving the shape to the cell? So you all should understand the part which is responsible to give the shape of the cell is called membrane. This you should all understand, really important. Membrane which is present in the cell gives the shape to the cell. Either it is a round structure or spindle or a long branched nerve cell is there, but all these structure are formed by membrane. Now there is additional structure which is present only in the plant cell, which is not present in the animal cell, which is only present in the plant cell, that is cell wall. Cell wall. Now this cell wall is present only in the plant cell in order to protect the plants. In order to protect the plants, this cell wall is not present in the animal cells. It is present only in the plant cell. Clear? We will discuss about membrane and cell wall in our next, when we will discuss about the parts of the cells. But the part which is giving the shape to the cell is called the cell membrane. Is called the cell membrane. Now, what is the size of the cell? Now, what is the size of the cell? If you'll see, there are a lot of cells are there and each cell is having different size. Now, the cells of the living organisms are very small, means it is just micrometer or micron are there, but some cells is having some few centimeters, as large as few centimeters. But most of the cells, if you see, they are microscopic. Now, why they are called microscopic? Because that cells can only be seen with the help of microscope. We cannot see that cells with our naked eyes. That's why we are using microscope in order to observe that or cell. So these cells need to be enlarged or magnified by a microscope. As you see, there is a cell that is bacteria cell. There is a cell which is a bacteria cell. His that size is 0.1 to 0.5 micrometer, and the largest cell is 170 into 130 mm. That is egg of an ostrich. Egg of an ostrich is having maximum largest cell. Now, the size of the cell, this point is very important, that the size of the cell has no relation with the size of the object. You have to understand this. The size of the cells has no relation to the size of the object. Cell is having the size only according to the function that cell is performing. As you have seen in the nerve cell, there is a long branched but branched cell. So whether, if you see, whether that nerve cell is present in the elephant or that nerve cell is present in the rat, it is the size is related only to its function. It is not about the size to be of an object. It is not about the size of an object. So nerve cells both in element and rat are long and branched, and they are performing the same functions. They are performing the same functions. I hope it is clear. So the size of the cell is completely depend only on the function which that particular cell is performing. It is not about, there is no relation about the size of the body of the animal or plant. Now, in the next, we will see the cell structure and what are its functions. The cell structure and functions. Now, you have learned that the living organism has many organs. As we have seen that the living organisms is having kidney also, it is having lung, it is having lungs also, it is having heart also. So there are a lot of organs which are present in the living organisms. Now, each organ is performing a certain function. For example, if you see, digestive organs constitutes the digestive system. Digestive organ means lungs is there. I'm sorry, digestive organs means stomach is there, kidney is there. So these are contributed to be the digestive system. Each organ is performing different functions, just as digestion, assimilation, or absorptions. Clear? Similarly, different organs are present in plants also. If you see, we have seen the parts of plants. We have seen root, stem, leaves, fruits, flowers. These are all parts of the plants. So root is the organ which is present in the plant in order to absorb water and minerals from the soil. And we all know that leaves are responsible for the synthesis of the food. So leaf is having certain different function, root is having certain different functions. Now, each organ is further made up of small parts called tissues. Now, there is a new term is introduced in this chapter, cell, that is tissues. Now what is this tissues is all about? Actually, a tissue is a group of cells which are having certain specified function. For example, if you see in the digestive system, can you imagine that digestive system consists of only single cell? No, there is combination of cells in which each cell is performing the function of digestion. Each cell, that particular group of cell which is present in that system, they are performing the same function, that is digestive function, yeah, digestion. So that combination of cells are called as tissues, in tissues, and that tissues combinedly to form an organ. Clear? So actually the sequence is that an organ is made up of tissues, and these tissues are made up of cells. Combination of cells is called tissues, and combination of tissues is called an organ. That is why cell is the basic structural unit. Basic structural unit. So I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, what are the parts of the cell? Now, if you see, there are a lot of parts are present in a cell. And if you see the outer side of this cell is called cell membrane. Cell membrane. Now, if you see, there are two types of cells are there in this figure. One is the plant cell and another one is the animal cell. So, if you see that cell membrane is present in both animal cell as well as plant cell. So, the basic components of the cell, if you see the basic components of the cell, there are three basic components in a cell. First one is the cell membrane. First one is the cell membrane. Second one is the cytoplasm. This is in between the cell membrane. There is inside, there is a cytoplasm, and then this center point, that is nucleus. Center point, that is nucleus. So each cell is having three main components: cell membrane, cytoplasm, and nucleus. Now, this cytoplasm and nucleus, are, if you see, the cytoplasm and nucleus are enclosed in this cell membrane. You can see clearly that the nucleus and the cytoplasm are enclosed in this cell membrane. Within the cell membrane, it is also called as plasma membrane. It is also called as plasma membrane. It is also called as plasma membrane. Now, this membrane actually separate the cell, separates the cells from one another. Means actually this membrane is separating the cells from one another. Here, and also the cell from the surrounding medium. The cell from the surrounding medium, that component which separates these two cells are called as cell membrane. Now, for this, it is taken an example. Let us take an example, that is an onion shell. If you take an onion, a simple onion, the vegetable which we are using in our day-to-day life, if you take that onion and if you remove that pink-sided image, then the another core region which is present inside the onion, that is called as onion cell. That is called as onion cell. That is onion cell, means that inside structure, when you remove that pink side, flashes out, and then you'll see that inner structure is called as onion cell. Now, the boundary of that onion cell, the boundary of that onion cell is cell membrane, is cell membrane. So the boundary is cell membrane, and if you remove that boundary, there is another thick covering is there inside the onion cell, which is called as cell wall, which is called as cell wall. So if you see, the boundary of the onion cell is the cell membrane covered by another thick covering called the cell wall. It is called the cell wall. Now the central dense round body which is present in the onion cell is called as nucleus, is called as nucleus. Now in between nucleus and cell membrane, in between nucleus and cell membrane, there is a jelly like substance which is called as cytoplasm, which is called as cytoplasm. So if you see, there is a nucleus is there, as well as there is a cell membrane is there. So in between there is a jelly like structure which is called as cytoplasm, which is called as cytoplasm. Now you have already learned in the earlier phase that cell membrane gives the shape to the cell. This cell membrane which is present, it gives the shape to the cell. This cell membrane, this cell membrane is actually giving the shape to the cell. Now there is another thick layer which is present. Now it is very important to know that this cell wall is only present in the plant cell, it is not present in the animal cell. This is a huge difference. This cell wall, another outer thick layer cell, it is present only in the plant cell. It is not present in the animal cell. So this additional layer surrounding the cell membrane is required by plants for protection. As I know, as I've told you, that for the protection of the plants, this cell wall is present. Now, how do the plants needs this protection? Now, there is a variation in the temperature, there is high wind speed, atmospheric moisture is there. So, in order to prevent from these hazardous measures, it is required that there should be a cell wall should be present. Clear? So it is clear. Now let us study about this cytoplasm. Now what is this cytoplasm is all about? See, cytoplasm is actually a jelly-like substance which is present between the cell membrane and the nucleus, which is present between the cell membrane and the nucleus. Now there are various other components are also present which are also called as organelles, which are also called as organelles of cells. These are also present in the cytoplasm. They are, if you know about these names, they are mitochondria or ribosomes. These are organelles which are present in the cytoplasm. Now, there is a detailed discussion about these all cells structure or the cells parts in higher classes. If you go into the higher classes, class 9th or 10th, there you will get a description about all these organelles, cytoplasms, all. So it is only just introductory part in this class, that is class 8 only. There is only introduction. Now the most important part of this cell, so that the cell can perform its function, the most important is nucleus. Now we will study about nucleus. See, it is the most important part of the living cell. Clear? It is actually a spherical in shape. If you see, the shape of the nucleus is actually a spherical shape, and it is present in the center of the cell. It is present in the center of the cell. Now, it can be strained in seen easily with the help of microscope. Now, with the help of microscope, you can see these nucleus. Okay. Now, this nucleus is separated from the cytoplasm by a membrane. Now, if you see, all around this nucleus there is cytoplasm is there. Now there is one layer which is separating this nucleus from this cytoplasm, and this layer which is separating the cytoplasm from the nucleus is called nuclear membrane. Nuclear membrane. So nuclear membrane is what? It is present in between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Now if you see, there are lot of various shapes and size objects are also present inside the nucleus. With a microscope of higher magnification, you can see nucleus. Clear? There are smaller spherical bodies which are also present on the nucleus, and these smaller bodies are called as nucleons. These smaller bodies are called as nucleons. Now there is a thread-like structure is also present. If you see in this nucleus, there is a thread-like structure is also present. Clear? Now this thread-like structure are called as chromosomes. Chromosomes. These thread-like structures are also called as chromosomes. Actually, these chromosomes are carrying genesis. Clear? And it also helps in the transfer of characters from the parents to the offspring. So these are they carry genesis which are helpful to transfer the of characters from the parents to the offspring. Clear? So nucleus is actually the control center of the cell. The entire content of the living cell is known as protoplasm. Entire content. Entire content of the living cell is called as protoplasm. Clear? It consists of cytoplasm as well as nucleus. Yeah. So I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, if you see, there is another important aspect is there. One small aspect is there now left in this chapter. If you see the bacterial cell, there is a single cell which is called as bacterial cell. It is a bacterial cell. Now, the nucleus of that bacterial cell is not well organized like the cell of multicellular organisms. See, bacterial cell is a single celled organism, and each organism is made up of cells, and each cell is having a nucleus. So the single celled organisms are not having well organized cells, nucleus, which is multicellular organism is having more well organized nucleus. So the cells which are having nuclear material without nuclear membrane are termed as prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells. See, this nuclear membrane, it is present in multicellular organisms only. Now, you know what is this nuclear membrane? Nuclear membrane is actually separating the cytoplasm with the nucleus. Now, in the multicellular organisms, these nuclear membrane are present. But in a single-celled organism, these nuclear membranes are not there. So cytoplasm and nucleus both are mixed together, and there is no not it is not the nucleus is not well organized. These types of cells are called as prokaryotic cells. Now the organisms which are having these kinds of cells are called prokaryotes. The animals, the organisms which are having these types of cells, that is prokaryotic cell, then it is called as prokaryotes. Example, if you see, the bacterial cell is there. It is an example of prokaryotic cells, as well as there's blue-green algae. Blue-green algae. Yeah. Now, there is another set of cells which is well organized nucleus, which is having well organized nucleus, as well as nuclear membrane is also present. Nuclear membrane is also present. These kinds of cells are called as eukaryotic cell. So it is a very important concept. The cell which is having cell nuclear membrane are called eukaryotic cell, and the cell which is not having any nuclear membrane are called as prokaryotic cell. Now bacterial cell and the blue-green algae cell are the prokaryotic cells, and eukaryotic cells, they are multicellular organisms, are called as eukaryotic cells. So I hope it is clear to all of you. There are certain more components are also there. There is vacuole is there. Now if you see, there is also another substance which is present in this nucleus, that is vacuole is there. Now what is this vacuole? It is actually a blank looking structure which is present in the cytoplasm. Clear? Which is present in the cytoplasm. Now, it can be small, it can be single, or it can be big. Clear? So, these are actually some types of cells which are present in the cytoplasm. Clear? So, this is all about cell, and we have introduced in this chapter the basic knowledge about cell, its structure, and what are the functions which are performed by a cell and parts of the cell. So I hope you have understood all the concepts which I have taught you. Now if you have any doubt, then please mention in the comment boxes. Otherwise you should like our channel, subscribe, and share as many persons as possible. So guys, thank you. Have a good day. Jai Hind. Namaskar.